Hey everyone, this is Fernando doing another video for More Survivalists, and apparently today the world has ended because the US government has shut down, everything is going to hell, and because you cannot access national parks and zoos, everything is complete madness. At least that's what you're led to believe if you turn on the TV and watch the news right now. I don't think it's nearly as bad, and I think things are being exaggerated quite a bit, so don't let yourself get caught into all that. One thing though to keep in mind, and something that to at least keep an eye on, is the ATF using this as an excuse to slow down and take a couple of shots against gun owners, given that they're public employees and such, for immigrations and visas as well maybe, but I think that's one of the things that we may be seeing happening. But other than that, I don't really think it's that much of a big deal. I wanted to do this video besides that so as to talk about something else, and it's the matter of inflation. If you've been following inflation for the last few years, you may be thinking, well, it's really not that much of a big deal. There's really not that much inflation in US. The truth is that there's quite a bit of inflation, not only in US, but in Europe as well. And this is something that I saw quite a bit of in Argentina, with numbers being cooked and modified or being altered in some ways. Any statistic will depend on the way in which the information is gathered. Any statistic can be quite biased if those running the numbers want it to be so. So if you look at recent years in terms of inflation in US, I have it right here. This isn't anything that I just invented. These are the numbers of Consumer Price Index, so it's what the official US inflation since 2006. 2006, 3.2%, 2007, 2.8%, 2008, 3.8%, quite a bit there. 2009, all of a sudden inflation drops to minus 0.4%. 2010, 1.6. 2011, 3.2. For 2012, 2.1. So you may be thinking, well, it's slowing down. I think for 2013, they're projecting up 1.6 or somewhere under 2%. Now, the problem with that is that while these are the official numbers, unofficial agencies are coming up with anywhere between 5 to 8% inflation in US right now per year. And that's quite different. And you may be thinking, well, there can be quite a bit of variation. I think that minimum 5% is much more realistic than 2%. I get a lot of emails from my friends in US. I keep up with them, with different guys in forums and such. In general, you see people struggling more. In general, you see people having more, prices are just going up. You just ask around, and that's the way it seems to be. And that's extremely unprofessional, unofficial, based on what? On hearing people. That is the kind of thing that I learned is much more valuable than some of the junk we're being fed through the media and through official statistics and numbers. That's in Argentina. They do this like practically it's almost a national sport for the government to lie in your face. Just half or 1/3 or 30% of the real inflation people are dealing with. The most important inflation number is the one you run yourself in your head when you're walking down the grocery store with your cart. You're filling up your shopping cart and you see prices going up, and you're thinking, damn, these things are getting more expensive. Prices are going up. If you feel they're going up, then that's the real inflation for you. And where's all this coming from? The important thing to understand is that inflation can be extremely biased depending on the way you want numbers to be. If I want inflation to be 3 times as much as it is right now, using official numbers, looking at different prices, I can get that number. If I wanted to stay the same, or even if I wanted to drop, I could do that as well. For the Consumer Price Index, the way in which they do, for example, is if the price of meat of beef has gone up, has doubled from one year to the other, they will assume that the average guy, instead of buying beef, will be buying chicken instead. All right. Or instead of buying chicken, we'll be buying frozen hamburgers if that's the cheapest price. All right. That's okay and good if it's beef and chicken. The thing is that when it gets ridiculous, as it got in Argentina, you have numbers that really mean nothing. When beef is expensive, when chicken is expensive, when fish is expensive, and you end up running the numbers with caviar that's available in a couple of shops and no one is going to be buying. That's where things get pretty ridiculous. In Argentina, I think it was last year, what they ended up doing so as to justify an extremely unrealistic and low inflation was for flour, they would use a brand that no one could access, that was just not to be found in any supermarket. For bread, they would use, again, and for meat, they would use it. The price is found in a place called Mercado Central, which is just one large kind of bulk real grocery store in Buenos Aires. They would use the numbers of just that place so as to get the inflation numbers for the entire country. All right, just because it was found in just one store. Okay. At the same time, they would do things like this in what they call the canasta básica, which is like the cost of living number. They would throw in that number electric shavers, 3 or 4 types of hair dye, all right, that had dropped in price. Okay, those products had dropped in price from one year to the other. So you had blonde, brunette, and and camel hair dye dropping in price. So inflation, according to those, was going down. The electric shaver was going down as well. So they bring that into the equation, and they only run one bottle of oil brand that is available nowhere, and the milk and meat price is only available in this Mercado Central place, which is just that no one can access, or there's a very small number of people that live nearby can access and really take that number into account. So there is quite a bit of a difference, and to a lesser extent, this is in many ways what the U.S. government does so as to come up with numbers of inflation that are not as bad as you would feel when going around buying stuff in grocery stores and making your payments and such. If you take, for example, and this is all stuff you can verify yourself, the National Association of Realtors says that for 2012, inflation of rent is 4.1%. All right, that's double of the inflation by consumer price index numbers. All right, yes, this is just rent. Okay, this would be just rent. But keep in mind that for a lot of people, rent is quite a bit of a number. It's quite a bit of a percentage of their expenses. All right, and the same association, National Association of Realtors, is projecting for 2013 4.6% of inflation in terms of rent. All right, so on one side we have inflation dropping, but when you look at something that for a lot of people is almost half or at least 1/3 of their expenses, the price is not only just going up, it's quite a bit higher than the rest of the numbers. One other thing to keep in mind is that inflation is not the same for everyone. Inflation, you cannot just say that inflation is just one number. That average is actually not discriminating between people of different kind of income. How does this work? People of a lower income will have different expensive than that guy from a middle class or a rich guy. For a poor guy, a guy has this like the lower income sector, food and rent, those will be major expenses for him monthly. All right, maybe that guy, maybe a poor guy spends half his income or one third of his income in rent. All right, while at the same time, a rich guy he's not even renting, so that number doesn't apply to him, or if he does, it's just a small percentage of his expenses, and the kind of stuff he ends up buying is pretty much different. So for example, the price of meat, the price of bread and milk is going up. It's not affecting the same way. If the price of milk, bread, and rent is going up, it's affecting much more the poor person, all right, than the rich guy. The rich guy is going to be having in his expenses, that is a much smaller percentage. That's again something we saw in Argentina, where in Argentina the guys that were affected the most by inflation were the middle class sectors. Why? Because the way in which prices and taxes and such had been going up. For example, they would tax a lot and prices would go up a lot for private health insurance. All right, so the middle class guy that has some sort of private health care plan, inflation is going up quite a bit more than for the poor guy that he's not paying for that service and is relying on public health care or some sort of free health care service like that. At the same time, the poor guy is going to be hit quite a bit in terms of food prices, energy, and rent. All right. In Argentina, what ended up happening was that the guy that was getting nailed the most was the middle class. Then poor people were getting hit quite a bit, are still getting hit a lot because of inflation. And the rich guy is the guy that is less impacted by inflation. All right. Then finally, some are little tricks used that this I've seen happen and go down in Argentina. And then here I see it in Europe as well, and it's happening in US as well, is the hidden inflation of things. Toilet paper, for example. There's several articles and posts of how the cardboard roll is getting bigger on the inside, and a smaller amount of actual paper is being bought. How packages, bottles, and such are changing shapes and forms, and you're actually getting less content. Usually it's presented as a novelty, like a light dyed or new flavor or something like that. And that change of brand or specific model, there is inflation hidden. In general, packages get smaller, bottles, bags get smaller, the price remains the same way. Or for example, maybe a coffee. You buy a certain brand of coffee. All of a sudden, that specific kind of coffee from that brand that you bought is not available anymore, but you have the premium, premium crazy coffee. You used to buy crazy coffee. Crazy coffee is no longer available, but you have premium crazy coffee. And then they introduce their budget or value alternative that has quite a lot less of real coffee content than before, and the price is pretty much the same thing. All right, so it's not only the shapes of the packaging, is also what they put inside of it. If they're putting less coffee, less sugar, less fat, less meat, dog food, which we talked about before, if they keep dropping the actual content of what the dog actually needs to stay alive, then their inflation is there. The prices are going up, but you're getting cheated so as to believe that they're staying the same. Guys, all little tricks and things that I've noticed in my home country that I see happening in other places, and stuff to keep an eye on. What I think is going to be happening is as years go by, and this is going to be happening, it's going to be a slow process, but not as slow, unfortunately, as we would like. And in the coming years, we're going to be seeing more polarized society. We're going to be seeing more poor and you know, it's the difference between those that have and those that don't have is going to be growing quite a bit. Even in developed nations, the middle class is going to be getting little by little divided, or for most of it, the quality of living is going to be dropping quite a bit, closer to what the lower sector of society would be used to. You're going to be watching for the average middle class guy. You're going to be dropping you're going to be seeing a drop in quality of life, in quality of everything from services to stuff to what you're eating. It's going to be getting more and more expensive, and you're going to be needing more money so as to stay afloat and not drop from the social pyramid. So guys, that's basically it. That's a few of the things I've been noticing lately and I'd like to share with you. That's it. Have a great day. Remember to subscribe and see you on our next video.